of your life, different kinds of people talk to you. Some people encourage you, let you know this is going to pass, it's temporary. But some other people have this idea that when things are not working perfectly in your life, it's proof that something is wrong with you or that you're doing the wrong thing. Yes, sometimes that's the truth, but not always. Sometimes you can have everything together, everything perfectly worked out. You can have the qualification, you can have the connections, and things will still just not work out. You know, life is in phases. It's in seasons. Anyway, it's easy at such times for you to begin to develop some concepts about yourself. You know, that happens when we define ourselves by what we have and by what we have achieved. When you find out that you are not achieving, you're not acquiring, you know, you don't have the, so to speak, symbols of success, then you just find that your self-esteem is on its way down. I went through all that. When you're in that period when it looks like all the doors are locked against you, there's just no road into the future, you can't see clearly, the clouds are dark over your life. But it's at such times that it's good for us to remember that beyond the clouds, the sun is still shining, and that the clouds are there only because it's the season. It's just a matter of time. The season will pass and things will change for the better. But if in the season when things didn't seem to be working visibly, if at those times we have developed bitterness in our hearts, if at those times we have developed self-concepts that are negative, we have come to believe that we're failures, that we're poor, that we just can't do anything right, when the good season comes, we may find it very difficult to take advantage of them. I'd like to say something here today, and it's the fact that you are created in God's image. That should be the foundation for your self-belief. You are created in God's image. There's something that separates man from every other being on this planet. And it's the fact that there is something in us that is beyond the physical. There's something in us. There's a level of intelligence in us, self-awareness that we have that is just simply outstanding. We are created in the image of God. What does that mean? You have the capacity to function like God, at least to a limited level. You can think in unusual ways. What do we know about God? Well, it's the fact that if he doesn't have what he wants, he can turn what he has into what he wants. He is creative. You know, when I read the biblical account of creation, that's the first thing that I see there, the first 4 words. It says, in the beginning, God created. Wow, created. That's the first introduction that you have. And today when I look at man, I realize we are intensely creative. We are creative by nature. We are innovative. In other words, we can always find a way. God cannot be stranded. So you also need to believe that you cannot be stranded. There is nothing that frustrates a human being and frustrates his or her potential like a negative self-image. Your self-image is the picture that you have on the inside about yourself. That picture controls your life. There's a sense in which you do not believe that you deserve anything that is better than that person in the picture deserves. There's a sense in which you will never attempt anything beyond the capacity of that person in the picture that you have of yourself. You know, the frustrating thing about our imagination, it can create a picture that is far less than we really are. A picture that is far less than our potential. A Okay, we can use our imagination to our advantage. We can use it to our disadvantage. Many people use their imagination to their disadvantage. Okay, one of the first few books that I read on success was one titled Dream Seeds by Dr. Mike Murdock. Dream Seeds. Powerful book. I was a student, when I read the book. And there was a chapter there that struck me so hard. The chapter is titled The Grasshopper Complex. Well, it's derived from a biblical story, the story of the Israelites who were going to take over a whole nation called Canaan, a land flowing with milk and honey. That's where that statement comes from, the land flowing with milk and honey. And then they got right to the border of that land, sent a few people to spy out the land on their behalf. Those people came back, and they were leaders. They were leaders of their tribes. They came back and said, you know what? It's impossible. We can never take up such a place. They were intimidated. Then they made a statement. They said, we saw the people of that land. They said, and we were as grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. What a revelation. They said they were like grasshoppers in their own sight. The second part that they added there was a lie. They said, and so we were in their sight. Now, that was a lie because they did not discuss with those people. How did they know? But that is understandable because the way you see yourself is the way you assume that other people see you. It's an assumption. Sometimes other people see the greatness in us, but we see ourselves as being small. Some people see us as being rich, we see ourselves as being poor. Okay? These people didn't know. The problem was not the giants or the people that they saw. They described them as giants. That was not the problem. The problem was what they thought about themselves. The problem was within them. I'm telling you, some of the greatest limitations that we have in our lives are not external factors, they are inside us. We'll never rise beyond the level of our thoughts. So they said we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. I say, if you see yourself as a grasshopper, somebody will soon roast you. Somebody will soon roast you. Okay? They said we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. So Dr. Mike Murdock called that the grasshopper complex. Talking about the person who can, but who thinks he or she can't. I'm talking about the person who has, but who is behaving like he or she doesn't have. I'm talking about the person who has the potential to do it, but who believes that he or she can never do it. Listen, that's the grasshopper complex. I used to have the grasshopper complex until I discovered that I'm a giant killer. Listen, the point is, you look at other people who seem to be doing well, who seem to be achieving their goals, who seem to be succeeding. What do you think is the basic difference between you and them? A lot of the time, we assume, oh, it's because they come from a wealthy family. There's a friend of mine, very good friend of mine in the city where I live. He pastors one of the largest churches in the city. When I began to hear about him many years ago, I, wished or hoped that someday we would meet. And that day came. But before then, the church did something. They moved from a small facility that wasn't looking so beautiful into one of the most beautiful facilities in our city. And it cost a fortune, for them to stay in there and run their events. And I was thinking to myself, why should somebody spend that kind of money? And because he comes from, an elite family, what you would call a wealthy family, I thought, come on, it's because he comes from a wealthy family. That's why he would do such a thing. But if you